guest this evening is Mark Johnson. And Mark Johnson is a seasonal, I'm just out of it tonight. Okay, Mark Johnson is a seasoned paranormal researcher, radio host, and publisher. He has been investigating the paranormal for over 17 years and was the founder of New Jersey Paranormal Research, which he led for 10 years. He is currently the co-director of the Supernatural Analysis and Research Institute, SARI, along with Irene Allen-Block. Mark was also host of the popular radio show Unknown Origins Radio. That's a fantastic show, by the way, and is now co-host of Paranormal UK Radio. He is also the co-owner of Glannant Ty Publishing. And Mark has always been interested in all aspects of the paranormal from an early age, and his investigations over the years have opened up new doors and insights into our strange and magnificent world around us. Excuse me. Mark is knowledgeable on the paranormal, ufology, cryptozoology, and high strangeness events, and his website is paranormalukradionetwork.com. And please welcome Mark to the show this evening. Good evening, Mark.
Hi, Solaris. How are you?
I'm great. If I can just spit everything out tonight correctly, that would be fine. But yes.
I must say, I'm a seasonal investigator. I'm currently in winter mode and still trying to get into spring.
Oh, is that what I said? Oh, I see. So you're now trying to switch things with neurolinguistics on me, aren't you? For anybody who doesn't know, Mark is my publisher, and I just adore him. He's a wonderful man and creative, and thank you, yes, for 1 Million Miles to Midnight.
Thank you. No, it's a great book. Everyone should go run out right now and go buy it.
Oh, thank you very much.
After the show. Listen to the show first, then after
So we have to listen to Mark, and you know, we do have to touch base on you. You have a great personality and many, many gifts. So we're going to get into those tonight. And also, what I love about you the most is your honesty. You're very straightforward and direct. You don't pull any punches, and I love that about you.
Yeah, sometimes it's to my own detriment.
Well, you could tell everybody about your show, The Rant.
That's one of the other shows on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. We, on Thursday nights at 11 o'clock, we have a 1-hour show called The Rant, and it's basically exactly what the show is. Whatever is like getting our goat that week, we'll be on there and we'll be ranting about it.
I think that's very important, especially in these times where politically correct is becoming quite irritating.
Political correctness has been irritating for the last 40 years, but I digress.
Correct. Yeah, it just seems like it's gotten worse over the years, though.
Oh, it's gone from into sheer lunacy. I mean, this isn't a political program, and I'll keep it to a minimum, but the lunacy that's going on out there in the world today is just mind-boggling that human beings could actually be that stupid, and that brainwashed that they can't think for themselves.
I agree. Well, you know, it reminds me of what Einstein said, you know, the next world war, or the last world war would be sticks and stones or something like that to that effect. But I think he said World War III would be something. I can't remember. I'm really out of it.
I don't know how World War III will be fought, but I know how World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Yes. That's
exactly it. And I think that's what's happening right here on the timeline, seeing a lot of primordial stuff. And you have to ask yourself, you know, coming from your esoteric background with the supernatural world, do you think some of these people are just plain entity possessed that are acting insane and violent and hostile? What do you think the cause is behind that?
Honestly, if we want to put our tinfoil hats on here, something that through the years of research and interviewing people, and I believe you may have had him on your program. There was Christopher Garantano who directed the Montauk. He did the Montauk Chronicles, and which is an excellent documentary if anybody hasn't seen that. That really helps shine a light on what happened in Montauk, Long Island with the MK Ultra program and the experiments. My personal opinion is what we are seeing today is a direct result of those experiments back in the 60s to early 80s, because they were experimenting with all different types of brainwashing, mind control, and it was started in the 1980s, the early 1980s, when political correctness reared its ugly head. And then everything became politically correct. And then the teaching in the schools started dumbing down. What I think we've been witnessing is a long-term societal conditioning project. Where not only the media has dumbed down, the entertainment industry has dumbed everybody down, devices like our cell phones, which I'm guilty of having my face plastered in every 5 minutes throughout the day too.
OCD?
Yeah, it's like my electronic crack. And you, but you know what? They've conditioned people, whole generations. We've had 2 to 3 generations of young people growing up within this environment where they've been conditioned by the media, by political correctness, by these ideologies that now they literally can't think for themselves. You know,
I agree.
Common Core math in school. I see some of this and I go, what in the hell is this stuff? It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like they're purposely trying to confuse people so that they won't try, they won't learn, they remain dumb, and they're easily brainwashed. I
Exactly.
I love pointing to there's this one movie that came out in the late 80s. John Carpenter, the famous director, did Halloween, The Fog, The Thing, Escape from New York. He did this movie called They Live
Hmm.
with the wrestler Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of that movie was the yuppies at that time during the end of the Reagan era. The yuppies and the rich people were actually aliens from outer space, and they brainwashed everybody through like subliminal messages and whatnot. And they and you know, it was supposed to be poking fun at the Reagan era and the idea of greed. But if you look at that movie today, there is so much in there that is prophetic to
Hmm.
exactly where we are today in terms of mind mind control, brainwashing, dumbing people down to accept certain ideologies, don't rock the boat, don't question authority, and be in total control. And I see
Hmm.
we're living that right now.
Oh, we certainly are. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And it's interesting because I have a background in the covert technology and mind control too. And I understand very clearly about synthetic telepathy and the entrainment programs, which are based on artificial telepathy interface. I mean, this isn't science fiction, this is real technology. And behind all of this is the CIA, alphabet agencies. I mean, they're notorious for these induction programs. In the old days, they used to have the torturous avenues of physical assault and electrocution, to entrain the brain. And now it's just interface with AI. So what are signals and transmissions, and so this is a very serious thing. You're right. They're trying to literally censor everybody and everything here on the timeline, so that if you don't walk, talk, and act the right way, they're going to find a way to either fine you, put you in prison, or even worse, and train you into one of these covert programs.
It's a scary time we're living in here, especially since it's been revealed lately. And people look at Edward Snowden, and some people think he's a hero, some people think he's a traitor. But you know what the man did? He exposed how deep the spying program was going on our government spying on its own citizens.
Hmm.
And even now, within the last couple of weeks, WikiLeaks has come out and proven that the FBI, CIA are all spying on us through every device we have, even our freaking microwaves. That kind of blew me away. Your
Yeah, I'm not sure
smart
about that
TV,
one. I mean, I know you can. I know you can do microwave. Obviously entrainments with brainwaves, but not sure about
but
that.
the smart TVs, if you have a laptop and you have a webcam, put tape over that thing because they're probably watching you.
Oh yeah.
It's disgusting the amount of surveillance that they're doing on the own public. It
Right.
reminds me of what was going on with Soviet Russia
Uh
against
huh.
its own people.
Right. Well, they're calibrating people for technology, and people seem to dig it, as you were talking about. But at the same time, they realize they're losing their privacy for that piece of technology that they have that's more convenient. The biggest problem I'm seeing is because coming from my background with artificial intelligence interface, that's the next step: is lose the lose the microphones, lose everything, and interface with the AI to a point where you don't need a cell phone, you don't need televisions. You have this global hive that you're interconnected with communication. This is what they were talking about on Facebook, and Zuckerberg. I don't know if you saw that article, but he was really big on synthetic telepathy. Oh, you can just communicate with your friends, and that's called EEG cloning and heterodyning to some degree because it's artificial intelligence synthetic telepathy based. So that's the next step, Mark. And I mean, and you like quiet time, you like your own quiet space in your own vehicle, your body, your mind. When people invade that, you don't have that anymore. It's permanently gone. So that's something that people need to be concerned about, and that's what they're not really addressing this yet in DC, but they're talking about they don't like that. Well, if they don't like that, how do you feel about all the targeted individuals out there who have been inducted into covert programs? And what you were talking about with Montauk, and that was the tip of the iceberg.
And what scares me is that there are people out there who actually think transhumanism is a great idea, that that's the next leap forward in our evolution, integrating man and machine together. And I think that's the worst thing ever, because whenever you have electronics and technology, what also do you have? Hackers. Every piece of technology out there gets hacked and can be remotely operated and controlled. So you want to have implants, cybernetic implants put into you to increase your memory and make you smarter or perform things better. Sure. And then the government comes along and then boom, they control you and you have no free will and no control over
That's
your
right.
life.
Well, they have to play the middleman. They have to be the controlling factor, because the one thing I've noticed is that they're terrified of evolution in consciousness. In other words, once we start expanding in consciousness on a multidimensional scale, they can't handle that because they don't have control over us, what we access in the multiverse. But when they interconnect us into these projects, they are the handlers, they are the controllers, they are the operators. I know that's what it is. And you're right about the technology, because it's man's version of technology. It's tainted. It's a dim version of mankind interface with us, who are very expanded as star people, really, when you look at us as energy and consciousness.
And I'm trying to find the right wording here. It's disturbing, the fact that we can't, as human beings, be allowed to grow. We can't become individuals. We have to be slaves to the state. We have to follow the rules and do what they want us to do, so they can control us, being the sheep. And they don't like the independent thought thing. It's
well, it takes down their paradigm.
It does, and anybody who has independent thought, look what's happening these days. People who express one idea get beat up by the other people who claim to be love and peace and tolerance.
Right. Well, there used to be a time when people would coexist and they would disagree and just agree to disagree and walk away. Now that they can't do that anymore. And I think a lot of it, Mark, is IQ. I think a lot of these people aren't smart enough to have a debate. They're not smart enough to have a coherent conversation. And everything is just like almost grunts and whistles at this point. So, yeah, it's making me a little bit concerned insofar as where we're heading. And when I say we, I'm not talking about beings like us, because some of us are very switched on and ascended in consciousness. But we simply cannot coexist like this. But something's got to give here. There's a huge separation in what I call intellect. There's a division here. There's a line being drawn.
There's also something that I was recently made aware of that I did not know about before, and I've looked into it and found it's valid. Are you aware of the what's known as the Schumann resonance?
Right, and it's been spiking, right?
It's
you did
been
an article
spiking.
On that.
Yeah, we did an article on that after I had heard about it and did some research, where, just to explain to people who don't really know about it, the Schumann resonance is the measurement of the Earth's natural electromagnetic field. This is the magnetic field that surrounds the whole planet. It protects us from the harmful solar radiation of the planet. It's generated by our molten core deep inside the Earth, and it's for ever since they've been measuring this for about 100 years now. It's been a steady 7.8, I believe, hertz. Now, what's interesting about that is 7.8 hertz is the same frequency of the human brain in like a hypnotic state, meditative state, alpha wave state of dreaming. And so it's a very calm. And for reasons unexplained since 2014, only in the last 3 years, it's been spiking and rising and getting higher and higher. And most recently, it had gotten up to almost 35 hertz. Yeah. Now, if you compare that with the human brain at 35 hertz, that's the sheer panic, absolute anxiety, terror mode, flight or fight mode.
It's interesting. Do you correlate that with CERN? Because I do.
I honestly don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just do know that it is interesting to realize that at the same time that everybody out there is going, crazy with over the board violence and terror and fear rules the day out there. And at the same time, the Schumann resonance of the Earth has raised about 500%.
Yeah, yeah.
my question is everybody crazy because the resonance is going up, the Earth's frequency is raising, or is the Earth's frequency raising because everybody out there is going Looney Tunes?
No, I think it's actually, I know there are two different, well, obviously there's ascension connected into this thing where we have frequencies bombarding this planet from higher dimensional spaces, which are literally opening things up on a higher frequency to a point where people are what we call detoxifying. And if people aren't prepared to hold light or higher consciousness, then they react in the same way you're describing. They can't hold the vibration and the frequency of the full light universe. So they're literally acting up and they're becoming insane to some degree. They can't hold the frequency. But another thing comes to mind is I think they started CERN up, if I'm not mistaken, just around that timeline. And they've been ramping CERN up more and more and more. You know it's going to have a resonance effect with the Earth. It's going to have an amplification effect. I don't care what they say, because it's just common knowledge to some degree that would have an impact. But I do think you're right that they're trying to entrain the masses to some degree to react in panic. But I also know on a higher frequency level that if you can stabilize to higher frequencies, you feel bliss and you feel centered and peaceful. So there's definitely something going on a dual level there.
It's interesting to see where it's going to go. I mean, I feel like we're about ready to hit a breaking point. Something is going to happen, I feel, within the next year. Don't know exactly what it could be. Now, as crazy as it seems like I've been talking on some of this, I also have a very deep spiritual side. And I've also been trying to, especially in the last year, get back in touch with my intuition and the spiritual side. I've been getting back into my tarot readings. I used to read tarot a long time ago, put it away for about 15 years. Now I'm getting back into it. And what's interesting is twice over the last few months, I've specifically done a reading with asking the question, where are we going? Because everything is just going so crazy. The first time I did it was just before the election, and the second time was last week. And I got the exact same response both times. And it seems to fly in the face with all the chaos that we're encountering right now and all the fear that is out there. I mean, let's face it, the media is pumping fear out daily. It is doing its best to scare the living hell out of everybody and formulate hate and uncertainty. And yet the readings that I've been getting is showing a shift from the masculine energies, which we've been under for a very long time, back to the feminine energies, the divine feminine. Mm-hmm. And this shift is what's coming. And this is one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of this turmoil is because we're literally being dragged kicking and screaming into the next age of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think it has a lot to do with ascension once again, and the divine feminine is a big deal. Although you do see a war on the divine feminine coming from the Middle East and a lot of the Islamic extremism. Now, that to me is an abomination. But I will say, I think that's their resistance towards ascension and what we call the new Earth Star consciousness. It's really about raising our state of being so that we make that leap to becoming part of the galactic neighborhood instead of being in this dark age mentality syndrome.
Yeah, I still feel like humanity's in special education with the other intelligences in the universe just sitting out there and going, "Oh my God, are they ever going to evolve?"
The problem is this is as good as it gets. That's really I have to ask my question as well, because there are so many of us here who are so ready to go. And I don't mean we're ready to die. I mean, we're ready to just go to a better world. And one way or another, we're going to have that world. I don't know if we're going to have to just get off this planet and with our physical bodies. But I'm not kidding you, Mark. This is at the point in this continuum right now where we're drawing lines. There's a division here between those who are just not willing to ascend and move to the next level, which really they're incinerating themselves, and those of us who are willing to go to higher levels of consciousness and ascend and take our bodies with us. And that's all part of that ascension process as well. So you're spot on about the divine feminine.
Well, I have some friends who are ET contactees. Some of them are, I won't say their names, but some of them are fairly well known, and their stories are pretty famous. But I joke with them on the side, and I go, look, the next time you have an interaction with them, can you please ask them to when can we hitch a ride and get the heck off this rock?
Well, they always vector in the ships, and I always give them a hard time. Like, well, why don't you just get a ride, man? What's up with that?
Yeah.
Were they just going to watch a few flashing lights for here and there from the Black Space Program? I'm like, really? So for me, I always tease Tina Marie over at KCR. I say, you know what? She has a lot of friends over at Area 51. I say, come on, man, just tell them to send the Black Triangle over. I'm sick of this crap. So,
do I have to grab my towel and get my sub-ether radio, to
right.
hitch a ride, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Telling you. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, I'm really joyfully looking forward to a new adventure, and I know we're capable of doing things like that. And let no one stand in our way. That's where I'm at, Mark. I'm tired of this illiteracy and people in mainstream pushing the illiteracy. That's another thing you were talking about. There's propaganda. They're creating the fear, but they're creating stupidity. They're creating ignorance by lying consistently, and also dumbing down society from whatever it is, from teaching, from schools and education. Like you were talking about the stupid Common Core. My goodness, this is ridiculous.
It's you have stupid. You dumb down the populace, they're easier to control and manipulate. Mm-hmm. And that's if you have an intelligent, informed, rational populace, they're going to look right through the BS that's going on within our own government, what's going on around the world. I look at our government system. It was a beautiful system when it was founded, and it's been corrupted to such a disgusting state to where we are right now. I mean, I don't trust our government as far as I can throw them.
Well, they're corporations, and that's the thing when you start looking at that. But who's been running a lot of that, Mark, is the CIA. I think they're the main culprits in mind control and also orchestrating a lot of problems.
I believe that, and with all the other lettered agencies, and how they've infiltrated a lot of groups like MUFON, which used to be a respectable UFO group, and I feel that they've been so infiltrated that MUFON for the ufology community is kind of a joke, because they're so stuck on nuts and bolts and looking at things one way, and they won't move, and they seem to almost be purposely, holding everyone back from understanding what's really happening with this type of phenomenon.
Right, it's gatekeeping. It's really interesting because I should be presenting at a lot more of those conventions, and I never get invited for various reasons. Because first of all, I see through the illusion, and I know that they're using a lot of what they call the military abductions is all based on contactees being pulled into experimentation and extraction for data that they want to access about the contactee, insofar as what they're getting information from, what species it is, or what their connection is. So there's so much going on with that, and they are trying to control, manipulate information, and censor everything. Once again, it's about they have to be in control. They're control freaks. But what they don't realize is that they don't have control. This is our multiverse is vast and infinite, and we honor free will. And when free will is violated like that, forget it. So there needs to be a shakedown on so many levels, Mark. Not only in the United States and corporate governments, everywhere globally. People need to get up and wake up and step up to the next frequency and stop this craziness. I'm so tired of hearing about the Muzis and the Muslims. I'm sick and tired of them. I don't want to hear about it anymore. If they can't coexist, ship them out and get them back over to the Middle East where they belong. I'm just done with it. I'm completely done with it. So, I could go on and on about that.
I know you and I both. We could both be ranting on that.
I'm
forever.
a loving spiritual person too. Excuse me. And I was pulled into a lot of covert crap, and through that I became this fierce warrior Valkyrie because I had to fight my way out of a situation. I had to stand up and be counted and move beyond the spectrum they've created. So I'll tell you, people really need to take their power back. There's no doubt about it, but that takes intellect and strategy.
It takes intellect, strategy, and it also takes strength and courage because look, I'll just use myself as an example. Growing up, you're told certain things, you're told what to believe, got involved in the church, grew up in the church, and after a while, I started hitting my 20s. It wasn't resonating with me. And I started on looking on my own spiritual path. But you know what? There's so much indoctrination. And again, I'm not trying to bash anybody's religion here, but from my experience in the church is that, there's so much fear and indoctrination and don't question, this is what it is. And if you look at something else, it's evil or sinful or satanic. And there's so much beautiful truth out there that we're being kept from, or we're being conditioned to not look at it. And not giving it its due consideration. We are all spiritual beings having a human experience, walking around in these meat suits, and we have the ability to tap in, and everybody has this. We have the ability to tap into our intuition, to our higher powers, and even connect in directly with the universe. And we don't, because we have it beaten out of us from such an early age, and the fear that, the fear is put in at an early age. And so we don't know, we're a species with amnesia. We don't know who we are. And it would be so simple for us to learn, and so many people won't. And I know even I struggled with it for years. I started, the Christian upbringing, like, oh, you're looking at this, you're going to hell. Oh, you're going to hell. They add that fear into it, and you had to fight to get past it. And then I was bitter for many years, the bitter that, I was caught up in that. I felt like I was brainwashed, and it took a long time to get past that bitterness, to start to learn to live in the acceptance of, this is still who we are. And it's given me that desire to try to help bring some of that awareness to others. And you can't force it on anybody. People have to make the decision for themselves. They have to be able to wake up and want to make those changes. You can't force it down their throat.
Exactly.
And so, and it's discouraging to see people willfully remain ignorant, and they'll fight for their ignorance tooth and nail, because God forbid you should challenge their beliefs.
Right. Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the Holy Grail. I always compare it to, King Arthur and the Holy Grail, because it's almost as if they're missing something very, very divine in themselves. And once they have a taste of it, once they get that taste in their mouths again of the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, divine force energy, they become enlightened and they understand their path. Right now, I see a disconnect. I see a huge disconnect from everybody. Not all of us. I say a very small percentage of us are still connected, and we're making changes here. But the rest of them, they're in this horde. They're in this horde of insanity. And so that really does concern me. And they're not willing to step up. They don't want to learn. They don't want to grow and evolve spiritually. They listen to what I call not even music. They're entrained with propaganda from mainstream media, mainstream music, mainstream garbage, mainstream acting communities. They're not getting it. So it's almost like they have to be re-educated. And that sounds like, I want to stick them in a FEMA camp. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about the rest of those people that are the problem and not the solution, Mark. I do say that those of us who do get it, we just need to keep going forward. We need to keep pushing through and not allow these people to bring us down into this maelstrom, because there's no way out once you get down there. It's a snake pit to nowhere.
It's my opinion that the one thing that could break the hold of these corporate and government controllers, of all this propaganda and brainwashing that they're doing on us, is for the system itself to be broken. And by that, I mean, and this is going to sound horrible to people, but you know what? It's if some kind of natural disaster, whether it's an asteroid hit, whether the Yellowstone caldera blows, or even big sun flares that fry the electrical grid and puts us all back in 200 years ago when we had no electricity. Something like that is some major catastrophic event is going to be needed to wake people up. Look at the briefly what happened after 9/11. People came together like never before immediately after 9/11, and it only lasted a month or two. And then the hatred and anger started again, and the propaganda started, and the government started doing their wars and feeding the military-industrial complex. But for a short period of time, everybody put aside their differences, and in America, we were Americans, and there wasn't left and right. We really stood together. And it's some kind of catastrophic event like that, we need a reset button. And which I think may have happened when going back to the biblical flood, or the flood myths that most cultures talk about around the world, that happened about 12,600 years ago. I'm one of these people who believe that our history is all wrong, that humanity has been on this planet a heck of a lot longer than modern science will ever admit. They credit the first major civilization to the Sumerians about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. And yet we're finding evidence with these archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe, which is dated back to 10,000 years ago. And Pumapunka, which is dated back even older, and may have even been destroyed in one of these cataclysms, what they refer to as the flood. I believe that we had advanced human civilizations equal to or maybe even more advanced than where we are today, and we may have been highly evolved beings on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. But something happened. Something happened 12,600 years ago that coincides with a possible solar system wide cataclysm that caused the earth changes that happened, that caused the flood, and wiped out. And I think humanity was totally reset. The big civilizations fell. And then they tried to rebuild for a while. And then you see, the wonderful um, uh, megalithic stone structures that were built not only in Egypt, elsewhere around the world. And then as they date them, it's not that I refer a lot to Brian Forrester. I don't know if you
Oh,
know
I
who
love him.
he
Yeah, I've
is. Yeah,
interviewed him before. Great guy. Yeah.
wonderful gentleman. If you go to his YouTube channel, and watch his videos, he makes the most amazing case for how the older some of these sites are, the better the construction was. So what happened is it looks like we lost knowledge over time. People who had the knowledge died off after these cataclysms, and we reset to a primitive state. And then societies start building up over again. It wasn't that we were cavemen and then we learned agriculture and then we did the wheel and then we started building cities. That's what science liked us to believe. It was this nice, easy, linear progression. But it's more I think we've had um, very advanced civilizations. Big, humanity grew for hundreds of thousands of years, and whether through like the Ice Age or other catastrophes, that it's reset us, and we've had to learn things all over again. And this time, we've learned things from a purely physical standpoint. We've forgotten our spiritual selves. We've forgotten our the power of our minds and what we're capable of, and then the fear-based religions come in and take control of people, and we become a species with amnesia. We don't know who we are, and we certainly don't know what we're capable of.
Yeah, it's entrainment programming from A to Z. Great points you're making right there. And, if I'm not mistaken, I was under the impression that there was a theory that the moon was towed in around that same timeline you're talking about when everything changed. Can't say it's true or not, but I will say one thing, that's an artificial design work out there to some degree. And I think that there's a lot of ominous technology that's still embedded, which is transmitting frequency. And one thing I want to make really a point of was that our celestial heritage, who we are as multidimensional beings, never leaves us. You know this, and I know this, the listeners know this. I've always said we come from the stars, we go home to the stars. We are not from here originally. We enter onto a timeline where we incarnate on a world, but we are not from here. We carry that history with us at the cellular level. So cellular memory is there. So the amnesia can go away through frequency and higher consciousness. This is why we do the path of the mystery school or spiritual teachings. They don't teach you this, Mark, and you know it. They want to entrain everybody into fear. If you don't follow this, you don't follow that, you go here. That's BS. That is BS. So there's a lot of censorship and a lot of erasures that were taking place. But what I'm seeing here is almost like a pyramid in reverse. I'm seeing that technology has become reversed to a point where it's becoming very detrimental instead of being an assistant to us.
Well, because it's being misused.
Right.
It's being misused by people who are on power trips and they want to control everybody, and which control them so that those few people stay at the top. That cabal that people like to call them the Illuminati or whoever the shadow governments, whoever these people are, the corporations, the few are in charge and they control everybody else. They live high on the hog. Everybody else is down beneath them. We're just consumers. We're just customers. And it's a sad state of the world for us to be in. We really need to break free of that.
Right. Well, it's really interesting. As I look back on my life and where I've been with this covert technology, I understand very clearly why they conceal mystery school teachings or they conceal abilities of people who have special gifts. Because when you are an advanced being in consciousness and you get put on the radar, you become such a target to perverted, distorted people, organizations, corporations, greedy people. Like I can go down to Google and all these other places or DARPA, where they want to experiment on you, treat you like a lab rat. use you, take your brain templates or take your database of information or what your skills are and integrate it into their artificial intelligence system. So I see a lot of problems. I don't know how familiar you are with the Jade Helm program, but a lot of things they ran with AI array systems, which they're still being involved with, by the way, which deals with a lot of entrainment programming and also pursuing what we call kind of like a passive harassment with targets to a point where they pretty much entrain them to behave a certain way. Otherwise, they just take them down. So I don't want to see this as our fate of mankind. I'm just saying that things need to change. We need to get this crap under control here while we're on the timeline.
Well, it seems to me, and I'm going to slip into the subject of ufology here for a moment, because this planet is being visited and has been visited by beings. And I hate even saying the word extraterrestrial, because that's the assumption we make. Beings from aliens from another planet. I don't think that's always necessarily the case. But there are higher intelligences directly interacting with humanity. And what happens is people who have these experiences and have whether they've gone public or not, they suddenly come under harassment. They are being shut up. I'll mention Stan Romanek, who's right here in Colorado with us. And a lot of people in the UFO community have disavowed him and disowned him. And he's currently under indictment for supposedly having kiddie porn on his computer. Now, I know Stan, I know his wife, Lisa. I don't believe it for a moment. I think it's part of the harassment campaign. I've learned a lot of the details on what happened in the case, and there's a lot they've asked me not to reveal, so I won't. But it's another form of harassment to shut people up. And what is the best way to turn the entire public against you? Accuse somebody of being a pedophile. That's all you have to do. It's the new witch hunt in the 21st century. And even if the person gets cleared, there's always going to be that doubt in everybody's mind. Well, he got accused once, so that person's evil. We can't trust them. And you just totally, absolutely discredit them. And that's what happened, I believe, to Stan.
Let me ask you about Stan real quick. What did he have access to that would have put him on a hot list? Stan, personally, do you think?
If you've ever read his books and seen any of his presentations, part of what he is not only the fact that he's interacting with these beings personally, that they have given forth information about not only who they are, but who humanity is. He used to go into these trances and write out these complex mathematical equations. And, not only is he dyslexic, he has an 8th grade math ability. And yet he would draw out these complex mathematical equations in a trance. And they've been studied by mathematicians, by astrophysicists, and they can only understand a little bit of it. It's beyond them. But I've seen some of the drawings, and in there it looks like there are descriptions of wormhole travel, of traveling, folding space, traveling through a wormhole to cross vast distances in a brief period of time, which is what I think a lot of these beings do that do travel from other star systems. We always say, well, you can't travel faster than light. Well, yeah, but there is that way around it. If you go through the wormhole, the movie Interstellar really did a wonderful job of explaining that, of folding space and going through that wormhole and crossing vast distances in a blink of an eye.
Right.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with you.
There's a lot of that was in a lot of these equations he did. And that's another reason why they want to shut him down and discredit him so that nobody will listen to him. I'm friends with Dr. Jonathan Reed. He's the doctor who back in the 90s he filmed that alien that he supposedly killed his dog in the woods and he brought it home. And some of the video that he had from back in the 90s is very compelling. Now, again, a lot of people look at that, they, oh, it's fake. But there are aspects to his story that just strike a chord with me. And especially the fact that right away, the he's had to kind of leave the U.S. He was forced out of the country for a while, had to go down to Mexico because of harassment, the threats against him. They raided his house. They basically, he went into work one day and he didn't work there anymore. They changed, they erased him from his own work. It's really scary, frightening stuff because people, my point is that the government gets afraid because these alien beings, ultra-terrestrials, multidimensional beings, whoever they really are choosing to interact with average everyday people. And the skeptics always go, well, why don't the aliens land on the White House lawn? It's like, and my answer to that is, why? So that they're easier to shoot at, which is what the military has done for so many years.
Oh yeah, they've been so hostile. Yeah.
Or to be exploited because the government, which already has all this technology because of crashed UFOs and also deals with some of the less savory ETs that are out there, but the higher ones that really are trying to help humanity, they're the ones who are going out and working with these people individually. They're working with them and helping to raise consciousness, awareness, and trying to help humanity from the inside out, rather than coming and landing on the lawn and say, okay, like in Day the Earth Stood Still, and threatening, okay, now you all better get along now or we'll be back. That's not the way that they do it. And even in spirituality, that's the way, mass religions try to control people, but true spirituality comes from within, and it's a person's own personal relationship with God, the creator force, whatever you want to call it. It's a personal relationship. They don't like that because a personal relationship means they don't have control over you. And it's all seems to be about control.
Oh, it is. And it's a good point you make also, but we are, as I touched on, we are those species. I mean, we look at these off-world beings as something separate from us, but we really are the same. In other words, they are really a mirror image of us, except they're at a higher consciousness frequency most of the time. So when I see us, and I teach ascension work and DNA activation, and this is something I was teaching way before I was inducted in the Covert program, but that deals with how we raise our vibratory rate to access our multidimensional avatar abilities. And once we get to that level of consciousness, we start interconnecting with various species out there that are in alignment with the full light universe, not these negative entities, but really enlightened celestials. And that's who we are. So that's one thing that I'm very, very clear on, is that we are these beings where our higher self oversoul superconscious is a Godhead, is an ascended master consciousness. It is linked to this, and that they are terrified of that aspect of who we can really become once we get switched on completely. And I don't discount anything when it comes down to people interacting with different various species or having an encounter, because you're right. Why would they go to something that's hostile to them? They would go to something that is obviously in tune to the frequency so that they were able to communicate.
And all they have to do right now is watch our television and see what's going on in the world. And would you really want to come down and connect or contact a species that is like literally falling apart?
Oh, you know what? It's kind of like Nuke from Space. It's the only way to be sure.
Yep,
I hate to say it, but that's like, man. That's why it's like, if people don't flatter yourself seriously, this is like a dead zone to some degree. Not with us here, not with beings like us here, but I am saying it. It is like a dead zone. There's a lot of work to do here. And I can't do it all. I mean, we can all kind of contribute the light, but man, oh man, what a mess, right?
It's a mess, but this is where my compassionate side comes in. And sometimes I wonder if I'm just being naive, but you know what? Even the people who are in charge, even the stupid humans in the corporations and, wanting to grasp onto power, even they have the chance, the chance at redemption, to learn who they are and shed off this fear, this greed, this lust for power, and have that personal spiritual development and relationship. And there are aspects of that are so much more powerful than anything they could ever have in this physical plane. And they're ignoring it because they're grabbing on for the shiny golden coins, or the money or the big positions and the big fat bonus checks they get every year. And there are riches out there that no money could buy, and they could all have it. And I don't know. I've always been a big believer in redemption and people finding their way eventually. Even the worst of us, I think, can eventually find our way. It may take many lifetimes. I don't know.
Well, I think you're right about that. But one thing I'm very clear on is that this is almost like an end game insofar as this. There's no more incarnations here, in my opinion. I don't believe people will be incarnating here again. So they better get it right this time. And if they don't get it right this time, I don't know where they're heading. But I will tell you that the percentages who are on the path of spirit, the people that are awakened, that are really doing the good fight, they have their heart chakras open. They try to do the best they can. They're kind to animals. They're kind to each other for the most part. They're going to be fine. But these other hostile units that are completely almost possessed, no. There's got to be something else happening here, and that's one thing I'm seeing, Mark. And I'm more of a fierce Valkyrie. I think I'm a little less compassionate than you are. I'm kind of like a badass, hard ass to these people because I see them and I'm like, you know what? They know willingly. They're willingly knowing that they're doing harm to others and they're contributing to the problem and not the solution. And when they perpetuate that kind of a problem and they're not doing a check on themselves, that means they're never going to want to. And I do understand the aspect of, okay, you go through the bardo when you transfer out and you get a reflection, you get to look at your life. But tell me, why can't they look at their life now? Why do they have to wait till they transfer out so they can look back and say, look what a jackass you were? Seriously, people, wake up. That's my motto. That's just my little gripe, my little mini rant right
there. Yeah, and my problem is in my older age, I'm starting to be kind of a softie. So
I know. Well, I have you and I are the same age, I think, in the illusion of maybe I might be older than you. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm hard in some cases, and people who follow me on social media will see my rants or even on the rant page. And yet, when I rant at the same time, it's not just ranting for outrage's sake. It's to like try to make a point of people wake the hell up.
Right.
You know,
we
need to get beyond
because
that.
You care. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we do this is because we do care about what's going on. If we didn't care, we'd just be doing our own little things and not being on the radio, more than likely.
Exactly. Be a hermit up in the hills.
Yeah, seriously. But I think that I can applaud you for that, you know, what you're doing here. And also, you have some phenomenal radio shows, too. I want people to know about your shows. You need to let everybody know how to listen to your show.
Well, Paranormal UK Radio is the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio network that I'm on with Irene Allen-Block. She and I host that show. We also run the network together. We also run Glannant Ty Publishing together. We run the SARI together. So we've got our hands in a lot of pies right now. But for the radio show, we're on Wednesday nights. From 10 to midnight Eastern and Greenwich Mean Time. It's Greenwich. That's the way to pronounce it. And on Paranormal UK Radio Network, ParanormalUKRadioNetwork.com.
Excellent. Yeah, and I encourage everybody to tune into your shows, by the way. I always say Glannant Ty. I even do that wrong, see?
Well, you know what? To be honest with you, that's actually the correct pronunciation. It's Welsh. Right. Glannant T, or Glannant, we call it Glannant Ty, which is Ty, is Welsh for Glannant House, or Glannant meaning house by the stream. And we named that's actually the name of Irene's house in Wales.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's House Glannant. So it's known as Glannant Ty. That's why we named it that way.
Well, you guys are a nice combination.
Yeah, we recently found out that we were sisters together in a past life.
Is that right? Really?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we did this whole show on reincarnation when I did a past life regression a couple of years back, and someone who contacted me who was supposed to be writing a book. I'm kicking myself. I can't remember this lady's name, but I still have the audio recording she sent me to do a self-hypnosis past life regression. I tried it a few times, and nothing happened. And then one time I tried it, and I had a very vivid experience and saw myself in this past life in the 1800s in Boston. I was a young woman in this house in Boston. I remember what this library or study looked like. And then my name came to me. I knew the name. It was Marion Howe.
Wow.
And that's really all I saw and remembered. But it was enough from there to go in and do some research, and I found her.
Really?
I found her. Her full name was Florence Marion Howe. And Marion was spelled Marion, and because it was a family name, based on there was what was the the guy's name, Robert Marion, who was known during the Revolutionary War as the Swamp Fox. In fact, the movie with Mel Gibson, The Patriot, was based on him.
Oh, interesting. And Mark, hold that thought. We're going to head for a break. Everybody, you're listening to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Mark Johnson. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.